how do you keep in contact with people that you're not necessarily doing business with, but you want to kind of stay on their radar?
I only do business with friends. So if we do business or want to do business, it's because there's a common interest and we've developed a friendship. What do I do? Well, pest control, you have multiple other companies, you have a podcast. So if I'm around someone who I think might be a good guest for your show, I'll just send you a text out of the blue and say, hey, Allan, have you ever met so-and-so? I think they'd be really good for your show. Or if I know someone who's going to Detroit, I might say, hey, any good restaurant recommendations? And give you a chance to be a thought leader and to show off your city and to show off your knowledge, because people like to talk about themselves.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Business Growth Pod. I'm your host, Allan Draper. Today, I would like to welcome to the show Jeff Fenster. Jeff is an award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author, and expert in relationship capital. His entrepreneurial success is vast, ranging from a quick-serve restaurant chain, payroll and HR company, digital marketing agency, and a construction company. But no matter what venture Jeff pursues, he lives by the principle of putting people first. He was named a top 100 entrepreneur in America under the age of 35, top 40 executive under 40 by the Business Journal, and a top entrepreneur to follow for 2022. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
That's amazing, man. That's a mouthful. And I imagine we could kind of go on and on with your profile and your bio. What is it that kind of got you interested in business? What was it that kind of started that desire for you?
To be honest, it was out of spite. I went to law school to be a sports agent, had a job lined up with Lee Steinberg Sports Agency, had a kid in law school, and when I graduated law school, decided I didn't want to pursue that career, so I needed a job. And I got a job out of law school selling payroll for a big payroll company called ADP.
Okay,
and
yeah.
I did that just to pay my legal bills and law school bills, not legal like my legal, but law school legal bills,
Sure.
Student loans, and take care of my daughter and fiance and start to build a life. And my first 6 months there, I was the number one sales rep in the country, and I made a bunch of money and was really successful selling payroll. And I had negotiated a bonus or a bump in my base pay from $38,000 to $54,000 once I hit a certain milestone, and I hit that milestone very quickly. And when I went to my boss in January of 2008 and said I'd like to get that bump, they explained to me I had to wait until the end of the fiscal year, which wasn't until June, so I'd get it starting in July. And I wasn't okay with that, and so I was 24 and had an ego and threatened to quit if they didn't give it to me. And long and short of it is they called my bluff. So I quit my job, sold my house that I just bought, and moved my fiance and daughter into my parents' house and started my first company, which was a payroll company, just to basically stick it to ADP.
Wow.
Yes.
It's interesting the different paths that entrepreneurs have, and I think some of us are kind of forced into it, right? Where it's like, it's whether it's just by our personality, by our circumstance. I mean, technically you could have gone and got another job.
Sure.
Probably had a decent resume. You could definitely talk about all your accomplishments at ADP, and that's cool that you were willing to do that. We talk a lot about how you have to go to great lengths as entrepreneurs, and that's fascinating, especially because the world judges us. And I think there's this aspect to being an entrepreneur where you put that outside of your your thoughts, where it's like, hey, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I went to law school. I practiced law for a while, and I quit my legal job. I was working in Phoenix, had a well-paying legal job. I quit that, and I moved to Detroit, Michigan to start a pest control company. And people thought I was crazy. And looking back on it, that was a decade ago, and I can see why, right? I've always been afraid of the advice that you should go get a stable job with good benefits.
Yeah, I agree. And when I quit my job at ADP after graduating with a law degree that I didn't use and accumulating six figures in law school loans just for the fun
Mm-hmm.
of it, I was having this conversation with my dad, and he was quite annoyed with my life choices at that moment.
Yeah.
Annoyed that I went to law school and I'm not pursuing that instead of just being an outside salesman for an ADP. And then I'm the number one rep making a bunch of money, and I just bought a house, and now I want to quit and start a company, which in my family, back then, entrepreneurship wasn't a word. It was business owner. And in my family, he was a doctor. My mom was a teacher. Like, that's just not what you do. And so he used to say to me, he said, Jeff, you're a father now. You don't have the privilege of chasing wild dreams and doing this crazy stuff. You have to have a stable job with benefits to take care of your family. And I saw that coin from the other side, and I said, I'm a father now. I'm raising a child, and that child has to look to me as the example. And do I want to set the example of settling because I have a family, or do I want to set the example of chasing my dream or pursuing my dream or pursuing a better version of myself, and knowing and trusting in that will be in both me and that path, and that I'll be okay and we'll be okay. And so maybe it's just who I am, but I saw that same coin differently than he did. And so, to your point of how we believe that the right stable choice is a job with benefits, I'm a product of '08, '09, and 10, which was the Great Recession. I started my first company February of 2008, and right before the Great Recession. And I saw what happened to stable jobs during financial crisis and people getting laid off. And there's no guarantee in life. And the other thing is, I also had a mortgage and a family and quit the job to pursue my own thing. And so the excuses we make to ourselves to why we can't do something, like pursuing entrepreneurship or chasing a better version of ourselves. And I don't like the word chase because it implies it's going to run. So I'm going to use the word pursue. But when I hear those excuses and those justifications, I think people have the wrong perspective and are looking at the coin on the wrong side. And when you start to understand that, no, having a family means you're more obligated to go do those things. Have a job and stability when it's just you and no one's looking up to you as to what that example is. But if you ask any parent, what do they want for their kids? And you say, do you want them to settle? Every single one's going to say no. I want them to pursue the best version of themselves, take chances, and find happiness. But then we don't do it ourselves, and we fail to realize we're teaching our kids the wrong path, and we're justifying it behind these excuses like I have a mortgage, or I have a family, or I have bills. Well, you know what? So did I, and I had law school loans on top of that. But those aren't going to change. Those are just life circumstances. You have to pursue you and what makes you happy and fills you up. And while I never thought of being an entrepreneur, now looking back, all roads were going to lead to that. Whether I stayed in sports agency and ended up starting my own firm or whatever, I don't see the world the way most people do, and I don't paint in the lines very well, which causes being an employee difficult. It makes me working for somebody else with their rules that I don't understand, difficult. And I think all paths were eventually going to lead me down this version.
One of my companies recently was looking at this kind of personality scale slash behavioral test that would help us as executives determine where people were kind of meeting their strengths and finding kind of purpose within their roles within the company. And I did it just kind of testing to, so they could provide me this personality profile or whatever. And I can't remember the name of it. It's a very popular one, but they came back and she was kind of going through the ins and outs, and she said, you know what, Allan, you're basically unemployable. And I think she said it like kind of with this, hint of, it's almost a negative thing, right? You don't conform, like all these things. And I took it as a compliment, right? That, you know, because I'm doing that. Now, if I took that and I was employed and I was kind of following that path, it would be a little different. But entrepreneurs are just, and it's so cliche to say that that we're looking for something better, we're looking for something different, we're looking for a change of pace and all these things. But it's really true. And I coach quite a few entrepreneurs, and I try to help them stay focused. And it looks like you've kind of been all over the place, different industries, digital marketing agency, HR. Those are very distinct areas. You're in the construction business, doing all sorts of things, on over 500 podcasts. What do you do to kind of stay grounded so that you can focus on something long enough to develop some systems, have some success there before moving on?
Well, I think people see my resume and they see that I've started over now 15 companies, multiple exits, multiple failures, different industries every time. And they see that as sporadic and there's no path. There's no discipline, but it's couldn't be further from the truth. I implement a concept called vertical integration. So when I start multiple companies at the same time, most of the companies are there to serve my main company. So in this case today, it's Everbowl, my craft superfood chain, where I have 400 locations sold around the country and 70 open. My construction company was started just to build those for myself. My product import company and manufacturing company was started just to import superfoods and products for my main business. My studio, Unevolve Studios, was built to provide content for my main business. The fact that all those three other entities now have legs of their own, serving other brands and growing in their own vertical space, that's just a byproduct, but that's not why I started them. So I'm a big believer in discipline and focusing on the day. And I have a success formula that I've used again and again and again. And, I say this on stages when I speak, but I'm an ordinary guy. I just figured out what extra stuff I need to do to get extraordinary results. And it's possible for everyone to have that level of success in their life. You just have to have a formula. And for me, part of that formula is winning the day and setting micro goals and kaizening my way to success. So in each of my businesses, you will see that I am very specific and I have a ton of intention behind all of the strategic activity I do. And it's all meant for an end goal. And while I may jump from industry to industry once I'm done with the industry, it's simply because I also am very self-aware. You talked about that self-awareness test. I don't root for entrepreneurship for my children. Like, I don't believe entrepreneurship is right for everybody, just like I don't believe employment
Absolutely.
is right. Being an employee is right for everybody. I don't think being a public speaker is right for everybody. I think we are all who we are. And I think my personality, your personality, just means that we are meant to pioneer on our own and go as far as we're going to go, because we're the type of people that have to bet on ourselves because of whether it's that creative gene, whether it's that wanting more, whatever cliche you want to use. But ultimately, as I think entrepreneurship in the last 7, 8, 9 years has become glorified through social media and this influencer channel of understanding and seeing behind the scenes. But what people don't see is what actually goes into the life of a real successful entrepreneur or non-successful entrepreneur, an entrepreneur. And I would rather work 100 hours a week for myself than 40 for someone else. That doesn't mean it's glory. It just means I'm spending 100 hours working and I'm sacrificing time away from friends and family and other personal objectives that I want. And today I'm in a position financially where, yes, I have more economic means, and it looks like the result of years and years of that is a lot of financial success, and that is attractive to a lot of people, just like being a professional athlete is attractive to a lot of people. But what makes a professional athlete a professional is how many hours did you not see them training and working and doing. And so if you want a balanced quality of life, being an entrepreneur is not the right path for most people, because most people also don't hit that exit. Most businesses never sell, and most business owners never make millions of dollars. So you have to be in love with the process to go down that path. And if you're in love with the process, then having the discipline to do the daily commitments that have to happen to make your business successful is what you should be after. And you shouldn't be chasing riches, and you shouldn't be chasing fame or exits or any of those things. You should be trying to build a really good company that has a lot of impact and solves either a problem or provides a solution, or you're innovating, or you're making something 1 to 2 to 3% better. And that should drive you. You should have the passion to wake up and want to do it until you look at the clock and you realize it's 2 a.m. and you haven't slept. And if that doesn't do that for you, you're not going to hit the level of success you think you want, because you're going to lose to a guy like me who's going to be competing with you in your space that is that passionate and driven. And so, I think although I do a lot of things, to answer your question in a long way, I am very specific, and I have a ton of intention behind every action I do in my business. And it's all about driving towards an end result. I start with the end and I work my way backwards to where I am today. So I know the path. I know what I need to do to get there. And I follow my success formula.
You spoke about something that I think is really important to people that are focusing on building their businesses. They're trying to stand out from the crowd, and that is you identified things in your life, your skill set that allowed you to separate yourself from others. What was that process like? I feel like this is very personal to me because I'm kind of going through this, and I've identified some things, and I can definitely tolerate better than others. And Jerry Seinfeld was on the Howard Stern show, and he said something that I love. He said, in order to be very successful, whatever, high achiever in a certain area, you have to find out what type of suffering you're willing to tolerate. And whatever that is, you go after that. Tell me a little bit about your journey. Tell me about what you went through to identify the things that you were great at.
Well, I've always been really good in sales and making friends. And so, today I have this quantifiable success formula that I use, and I'm going to talk about it a lot, and I'll just say the 5 things because there's 5 rules that I live my entire life by, both professionally and personally. And it's number 1 rule is make friends. Number 2 is have fun. Number 3 is take immediate decisive action. Number 4 is Kaizen. And number 5 is be change ready. And everything I do in life gets applied based off those 5 rules. So the first 2 sound very fluffy, and most people roll their eyes or just don't understand the importance of those 2, but those are the 2 non-negotiables. The other 3, there's some wiggle room. The first 2, there's not. And it's because if I make friends and have the relationship capital that I do have now, and I've built over a career, I have access to so much opportunity and so many resources and knowledge and domain expertise that I can enter any industry with 0 experience and compete at the highest level. Because my strength by making friends is I also have a ton of potential clients. I'm really good at articulating a thesis. I'm really good at solution-based selling and identifying problems and figuring out what I can do to solve that for humans. And if you do that, you can make money. So I'm really good at that front-end sales and marketing, face of the company stuff. What I'm not really good at is operations. What I'm not really good at is optimization and technology and all these other elements of the business. So early on, I thought being an entrepreneur, my first business, that payroll business, I used to run off a lot of talent. And the reason I did is because I was a young entrepreneur, a young CEO, and I thought I had to put my name and my fingerprint on every decision of the company. So when there were good ideas in my organization from an employee, I had to tweak it a little bit to make it a Jeff idea. And it was ego, and it was my own insecurities. And so I kept running people off, and I kept blaming them. Oh, they don't get the vision. They don't understand. They don't understand. Well, after about 7 or 8 people, you start to look in the mirror and realize there's only one common denominator here, and it was me.
Yeah.
Right? It was my own ego getting in the way. And then I realized, why do I need to be that? I win if they win. And how do I inspire them? Well, you know what? I'm going to be the dumbest guy in the room. I'm going to surround myself with people who are better at everything than me. And I'm going to put teams together to accomplish amazing things because I have vision and I have resources and I have access. And if they have know-how and expertise, what a dream team we're going to be. And so that moment, I switched my entire way of doing business and life and really focused on being the dumbest guy in the room and letting all those around me get credit for all of it. I don't need any of it. And trust me, half my companies have been successful and I have done very little other than have the idea, the resources, and the ability to kind of see the bigger vision, but they're the ones who are implementing it on a daily basis. And those individuals maybe are never going to start a company, but they're really good at what they're really good at. And when you can identify what you're not good at and what you're really good at and spend your time doing what you're really good at and attract or work with people who can fill your gaps, then you're onto something. Because so many of us like to hire for comfort. And hiring for comfort means you hire people like you. They like what you like. They have similar skills. The problem is no one's good at what you guys aren't good at. And you haven't built that team of differing ideas. And in a very polarizing world, you're seeing it today where, and I'm not to go political at all. This is zero political, but you see it in politics, right? You're either left or right. Mm-hmm. People stick together. Left people watch left news, right people watch right news.
Right.
hang out with left people, right people hang out with right people. I want everybody on my team. I want extreme left, extreme right, conservative left, conservative right, middle of the road. Bring me all of them. And let's put all those thoughts together and let's find the right approach for every situation and move forward together. And that has allowed my companies to exponentially grow. And it's such a huge differentiator for yourself when you start to get out of your own way. And I've realized I'm really good at starting companies. I'm really good at that serial side, from me and you on this podcast, thinking of an idea and going from concept through ideation, through taking it to market, through getting it to scale, through acquiring capital and building a presence in the niche. And then once it's at a certain size, once it's my companies are usually 8 figures. Once we're in the 8-figure space, to get it to 9 figures, I've never accomplished that. I'm working on that now. My Everbowl is an 8-figure business with 70 locations around the country, 400 sold. And our goal is to take it to 9 or 10 figures. I just hired a brand president. He now runs the company. And I'm more of a chairman role because I don't have the skills to take us there. And I'm okay being open about it. And it doesn't make me less than. It just makes me clear at what my role is on the team. And the more clarity you have on yourself and your abilities and what role you really do have, and you then can shine in your own shoes and go 100% that way, the amount of success you get is just unparalleled. And so now Everbowl gets to continue to grow. I get to focus on WeBuild and the construction company and scale this now into another 8 or 9 figure business, while Trevor is growing Everbowl and taking it from 8 to hopefully 9 or 10.
I think it's incredible that you have this ability to kind of put yourself aside and say, hey, I've never done this before. I'm going to hire somebody that has, or somebody that can do that. I'm going to put the people around me to fill in the gaps. When I started my first company, I felt like, and a lot of this came from a place of fear, to be honest with you. It came from a place of me not knowing, me not understanding a lot of things. And so I had to act like I had all the answers. At least I felt like I did. And then a few years would go by and I'd get more comfortable with myself, more comfortable being, the dumbest person in the room, as you said, and just building this team around me where it's like, I get questions all the time about our marketing, about, different aspects of one business or the other. And it's like, hey, I would love to answer that question for you, but I don't have the answer. And a lot of people are surprised by that response. They're like, what do you mean? Isn't your business? I've heard that a number of times. Isn't it your business? 100% is my business. But just because I don't know doesn't mean that somebody within my company doesn't know. And when you get personally to a place where you're able to back away and say, hey, my company's going to be great, even if that includes me taking a step back or me changing what I'm doing, that's when you can build something that's really special. And for some reason, after those first couple of years, I've never had a problem doing it, Jeff. And mostly because I've never wanted to be the technician in my businesses. I've never wanted to be the guy that was, doing the day-to-day. And so for me, it was almost a badge of honor after I got, felt a little more sure of myself, developed a little bit of a track record. I felt okay. And even it was a badge of honor for me to say, hey, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. And entrepreneurs, if you're going to scale, you have to do that. You have to be okay not having all the answers, but having people that do. And surrounding yourself, like Jeff was talking about, surrounding yourself with incredible people. And if you're going to surround yourself with incredible people, you're going to have to do a couple of things. You're going to have to share a vision that they want to be a part of. You're going to have to give them credit for things that they do. You're going to have to acknowledge them, and you're going to have to encourage them, and you're going to have to kind of be out in the front taking the bullets so that they don't take them. If something goes right, it's they get the credit. If something goes wrong, it's your fault. And that's incredible, about this journey of entrepreneurship. You talked about, Jeff, how one of your greatest skill sets is this ability to surround yourself with great people. Do you have a system for keeping in contact with people that you're not regularly in contact with through business dealings or whatever? Do you have some sort of, because I get so busy with things, it's hard for me to do that, but I also want to do it on a personal level. How do you keep in contact with people that you're not necessarily doing business with, but you want to kind of stay on the radar.
Well, I don't have a system, but I only do business with friends. So if we do business or want to do business, it's because there's a common interest and we've developed a friendship. And I am all about relationship capital. It's a little plug, but I do have a book that just came out. It's a just hit bestseller. It's on how to build, develop, and leverage relationship capital. It's called Relationship Bank Account. And in there, I teach ways to lead with value and to understand how to nurture these relationships. And it's served me so well. And as a special freebie to your audience, anyone who's listening who wants just a little playbook on how to start building your network, you can actually text the word Jeff to 33777. And you can have this free PDF that we put together called Network to Millions Playbook, which are some tactics and tools I've used over the years that has allowed me to enter these spaces with very little experience and go to the top of them really quickly. And it's not a product of me. It's a product of who I know. And so remember, it's not what you know, it's who you know. You've heard that a million times. It is a cliche, but it's true. I mean, I partner with Neil Patel in a digital marketing agency, and I'm the number one digital marketing agency in the world for a little while. And I entered the franchise space, and Drew Brees owns 150 franchises. I have a construction company, and I'm building for Shaquille O'Neal. It's not because I'm the luckiest guy in the world. It's because I'm developing relationships in my space specifically through building friendships and working with friends and building this army of human beings that are going around the world with my best interest at heart. And that's what a friend is, right? So what do I do? Well, now that I know you're in Detroit, Michigan, and you have a pest control company, if I see anything about Detroit or pest, I'm going to think of you, Allan. I'm going to send you a text. I'm going to say, hey, the Detroit Lions just drafted so-and-so. Or, of course, you said people thought you were – the only thing I think you were crazy about is choosing Detroit out of every city. I'm not entirely sure why Detroit. It's cold there. But jokes aside, that what I do is I build friendships. And once I get to know my friends and I ask a lot of questions and I understand what's important to them and what drives them and what's exciting to them, I just find reasons to have communication around that. And it's things that I now know in my head about you, Allan, about your legal background. You were in Phoenix. Now you're in Detroit, pest control. You have multiple other companies. You have a podcast. So if I'm around someone who I think might be a good guest for your show, I'll just send you a text out of the blue and say, hey, Allan, have you ever met so-and-so? I think they'd be really good for your show. Or if I know someone who's going to Detroit, I might say, hey, any good restaurant recommendations? And give you a chance to be a thought leader and to show off your city and to show off your knowledge, because people like to talk about themselves. And that's one of the things I talk about in my book is ask questions and be more interested in them than interesting, and get them to open up. Because once you understand what drives a human being and you know what makes them tick, you can then, and again, there is a little strategy here, but I can purposefully put myself in the way of what makes them excited and tick, right? So I'll give you an example. I was talking with Shaq about opening Everbowls, and it was a year and a half in the making. And ultimately his team decided that, there's a lot of decision makers in the Shaquille O'Neal brand and what Shaq gets to and doesn't get to do. And although Shaq wanted to do it, the rest of the team, we didn't get full buy-in, and he was just launching his own concept called Big Chicken. And at the time that he had endorsed so many brands, they thought it was a bad time for him to be endorsing another one when he's finally launching his own. And so through that process, I learned that this was very near and dear to Shaq's heart. And Shaq was very aware of WeBuild and how fast and inexpensively I can build Everbowls. And so he said, Jeff, could you build Big Chicken for me? Now, at this time, WeBuild had never built anything for anybody else. It was just to build Everbowls. We build them in 3 days. I do it very fast. It's very revolutionary. And I said, yes, Shaq, for you, of course I will. So I went out and I figured out how to build Big Chicken for Shaquille O'Neal. And now we build all the Big Chickens for Shaq. But in that process, I got to do and serve Shaq, right? So now Shaq's happy because I'm helping Shaq out. But as a result of that, I now have Shaq as a testimonial for my new construction company, WeBuild, that not only do I build Everbowls, I now build Big Chickens for Shaq. Well, guess what? Drew Brees was an Everbowl franchisee. So now I call Drew and I'm like, Drew, you're involved in a ton of concepts. I just figured out how to build Shaq's Big Chickens cheaper and faster for him. Do you want me to save you money and time and help you with your other franchise concepts? He says yes. So now he introduces me to these other brands, and now we're building Stretch Zones, we're building Capriotti's, we're building Wing Zones, we're building all these other brands that are happening because I served a problem and solved a problem for Shaq. And I did it because I got to understand, like when Shaq said no, most people immediately hang up and get bummed. And I said, okay, listen, I understand, but what's most important to Shaq? Big chicken. How can I help Big Chicken? How can I help Shaq with what's most important to Shaq, even though it wasn't everable? And it was me going and stretching my own barriers and my own parameters and saying, okay, I'm going to use the team I have and we're going to figure out how to build Big Chicken. And so that's very important as you're kind of learning how to utilize this. So in the middle of, when I see something Big Chicken related, I always send Shaq a text. Now, Shaq's a big name. Maybe I shouldn't use a name like Shaq because that's obviously an A-list celebrity name, but it applies no matter who it is. I got my largest payroll client ever from the checkout clerk, introduction from the checkout clerk at Albertsons, and it was her brother. And it was because for a year and a half, I'm going into Albertsons once a week to buy my groceries. And this is 2009. And I had just started my payroll company. And instead of putting my head down, saying nothing and checking out, I made friends with the checkout clerk. And when I say friends, we didn't go out and grab a beer or lunch or dinner or anything like that. It was totally just cordial conversation in Albertsons, but I lived in the community and she worked in the community, so we saw each other weekly. And it got to the point where it was, oh, how's the family? Family's good. How's yours? Oh, great. What's new? How's the business? Oh, yeah. She knew I had launched my own payroll business. She knew I'd left ADP. Like, we were at that level of conversation, even if it was only 3 minutes at a time. But fast forward, year and a half later, she says to me, Jeff, I have a favor to ask you. Sure. What's up? My brother's having major payroll problems. Do you mind if I give him your number so he can call you with some questions? Now, I don't think of a client here. I thought I was doing a favor for somebody, and I said, yes, of course. Give him my number. I'm happy to help. See what I can do. He calls me. He was having a serious payroll problem. Lo and behold, he had over 1,000 employees in his company. It was the largest payroll client I ever got. It was a 6-figure-a-year contract, and I helped him. I signed him, and then from him, that became the foundation and the new floor for me to go after other 1,000 employee size companies and elevate my entire brand and business. And it happened because I made friends with the checkout clerk at Albertsons. And the lesson there is everybody is somebody's brother, sister, aunt, cousin, friend, niece, nephew. And if you want to get to pick your big name, big company, if you want to get to Elon Musk, the best way to get to Elon Musk is not through Elon Musk. It's through his father, his mother, his friend, his girlfriend, his whomever, because their barrier is a lot easier to break than his, right? Everyone's trying to get to Elon. How many are trying to get to Elon's father? So if I knew Elon's father and I could solve problems for Elon's father and build a relationship with Elon's father over time, Elon's father will probably, if there's a reason, will connect me with Elon. And I've earned the right to ask for help because I've done and led with value. And so that's what it's about. And it's a long game. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not a build relationship capital quick rich scheme. And I call it, my book's called Relationship Bank Account because you have a bank account ledger with everybody. It's not money. It's relationship capital. If every time me and you talk, I ask for a favor, I make withdrawals. It's the same as deducting money from your bank account. You're spending. You're spending that capital, that currency you have with that human. But if you start to lead with value and help them in every which way you can, you're making deposits, you're building wealth, and you've earned the right to make a withdrawal if and when it makes sense. And so as you navigate the world, the more people you have healthy deposits with on a relationship capital basis, they're traveling the world thinking about you and your business. And it's like, as I'm sitting here with this podcast with you, Dan Fleischman, who's a good friend of mine, he's a big influencer. He knows a ton of people. He just sent a text connecting me with someone. And it just popped up on my computer, and it's literally about my book. And he's like, "You should talk to." He made an intro, and he said, "Jeff, talk to this person. He's really good at building a lot of other celebrity books." And he said, "You should talk to Jeff. He has this new book and this new podcast." And this literally just happened while I'm talking to you. And that is because Dan is a good friend of mine, and he's out there thinking about me. So when an opportunity comes up in life, and there's some synergy to me, he's leading with value and helping me, just like I would do for him. And just like how everyone should do for everybody. And so when you start to equate this and start to implement this into your life, the rest is so easy. And so the make friends and have fun part is so important to me. And that's what my book's about. And, the Jeff Fenster show is about the success formula, which is my podcast. And that's really how I'm trying to give back. And so, I think that it's an underutilized skill set. And if you're an entrepreneur, especially, relationship capital is the biggest currency you can have. It's not money and it's not your idea, because I can come in to your industry with zero experience and compete because of who I know and who's willing to help me. And if you have that same power, you can do the same thing.
That's incredible. A couple things stood out to me as we're wrapping up here. You talk about this, relationship bank account, and it reminds me of Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about this idea of making emotional deposits and withdrawals. Same concept, kind of a little different verbiage. So I thought that was interesting. And then it kind of hit me. If you want to do something incredible for somebody, help them solve a problem that they're aware of. If you want to do something that will make a lifelong impact on somebody, help them solve a problem that they're not aware of. And I think you did that with Shaq. It sounds like you were able to do that, where, he was aware that he needed something, but you provided what that something was. Jeff, awesome to have you, man. Where can people go? Where do you want to send if they want to learn more about your book, more about your podcast, all the things you're doing?
Well, my podcast is launching. I don't know when this is going to air, but my podcast is launching in the next 3 weeks. It's syndicated by Entrepreneur, so it'll be on all the major platforms as well as entrepreneur.com. The jefffenster.com website or jefffenster.com website is also launching in the next couple of weeks, so you can go there. Instagram at FensterJeff. Again, you can text the word Jeff to 33777, and we'll have at least a digital relationship that way. But or you can pick up my book on Amazon. If you can't afford it, reach out to me. I'm sure I can get you a copy. It's not a money maker. It's like a couple bucks. It's really not an expensive book, but the idea is to help other people with what has allowed me to be successful. I think success is formulaic. And so if you're sitting here listening to this, you're not where you want to be, both personally or professionally, let me help you figure out your formula. And if not me, find someone else that you can learn from to figure out what formula of success. Success leaves clues, and it's available to us all. And so reach out. As I said, making friends is everything to me. And I don't care whether you make $1 a year and you're a checkout clerk at Albertsons, or you're a multimillionaire basketball player. I want to be your friend, and I don't judge one over the other. So reach out to me. Jeff@everbull.com is my email. And you can also, again, find me on all social.
Love it. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please leave us a rating. And for daily inspiration and business tips, follow Allan on Instagram. Until next time, remember, we build the future one entrepreneur at a time.